Have you ever really truly stopped to think about how we learn something new? I mean, not just memorizing stuff for a test, but actually getting a skill or having an idea just click. Well, it turns out there's this incredible blueprint for how our brains do that. And in this explainer, we're going to dive into a pretty revolutionary idea that might just change the way you see learning for good.
Okay, I want you to do me a favor. Go back in time for a second. Can you actually picture it? I mean, really try. Remember the feel of a big, chunky pencil in your hand? The weird shapes of the letters? And most importantly, who was there with you? Because that little memory, well, it holds the key to everything we're about to talk about.
So the guy who figured all this out was a Russian psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. And here's the thing, his story is pretty tragic. He died super young, at just 38, and his mind-blowing work was basically ignored for decades. But his theory? It doesn't just explain how you wrote your name. It pretty much explains how we learn, well, everything.
So, what was Vygotsky's big, earth-shattering idea? He basically said that learning isn't a solo mission. It's not something we do all locked up in our own heads. Nope. His sociocultural theory says that our development is fundamentally a group project. You could say learning is a team sport.
This quote right here, this is the core of it all. What Vygotsky is saying is that every complex skill we get, whether it's learning to walk, talk, or, do calculus, it doesn't start inside our own brain. It starts out there as an interaction between people. And who are these people helping us out? Vygotsky had a name for them, the more knowledgeable person. Now, this isn't just your teacher or your parents. It could be anyone. Your friend who's a whiz at a video game, an older brother or sister, literally anybody who's a few steps ahead of you in a certain skill. They're like the co-pilots on our journey to learning something new.
Okay, so if learning is social, then how does that knowledge actually get from their brain to yours? Well, Vygotsky said we use specific tools to build our understanding, and they're probably not what you're thinking. He split them into two main categories. First, you've got your real tools. These are the physical objects, the pencil you used for your name, the book you're reading, the computer you're on right now. But then there are the psychological tools, and Vygotsky believed these were way, way more powerful. We're talking about systems of meaning, and the big one, the absolute superstar of them all, is language. It's the ultimate tool for organizing our thoughts, and of course, sharing them.
And this right here brings us to the absolute heart of the whole theory. How in the world does a shared social moment, like someone showing you how to do something, become your own private internal thought? Vygotsky called this the Great Transformation. So the whole journey begins on what he called the interpsychological plane. Inter just means between. So this is the social stage. It's learning between people. Think back to writing your name. This is the moment your mom or dad was literally holding your hand, guiding it to make the letters. The learning isn't in your head yet. It's happening in that shared space between the two of you.
But then the process moves to the intrapsychological plane. Intra means within. This is where you take the lesson inside. You internalize it. Now you're the kid practicing your name all by yourself. And you might even be whispering the instructions to yourself. Okay, around and then down. Vygotsky had a cool name for that. He called it private speech. You're literally using their words to guide yourself.
So you see the path, right? It's a simple two-step journey, from learning together to thinking alone. Every single complex thought or skill you have is traveled down this exact road, starting out as a conversation and ending up as your own independent way of thinking.
Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, I get it. This is a fascinating theory from like 100 years ago. But what does it actually mean for us today in our own lives? So what? Well, it turns out the applications are absolutely everywhere. This stuff still matters big time. All right, so here's the bottom line, the big takeaways. First, learning is social at its core. It's not a solo sport. That means mentors, teachers, and even your friends, they aren't just helpful, they're essential for real growth. And get this, that little voice inside your head, your internal monologue, it literally started out as conversations you had with other people. And finally, the tools we use, especially language, don't just express what we think, they actually shape what we think. So I want to leave you with this one question to chew on. Think about what you want to learn next. Could be a new skill for your job, a hobby, maybe just understanding the world a little better. Whatever it is, ask yourself this. Who is the more knowledgeable person in your life that can help you get there? Because if Vygotsky was right, Finding that person isn't just a good idea, it's the first and most important step you can take.
Hey there, you know that feeling when you're trying to learn something new? Maybe it's coding or a new language or even just a new instrument, and you just hit a wall? It's like you're completely stuck? But here's a thought. What if that feeling isn't a dead end at all? What if it's actually a signpost pointing you right towards a breakthrough? Right? I mean, we've all been there. That moment where it feels like no matter what you do, you're just not making any progress. It is so frustrating. And honestly, that's the point where most of us just want to throw in the towel.
But get this. What if that stuck feeling is actually a good thing? Seriously. It's not a wall, it's a signal. It's a sign that you are standing right on the edge of what you can do, and you're perfectly positioned for a huge leap forward.
Okay, so this whole idea brings us to this really powerful concept from a psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. He's the one who said that this wall we hit, it's not a barrier, not at all. It's actually a special place for growth. He called it the zone of proximal development. And let me tell you, this zone, this is where the real magic of learning happens. So what in the world is this zone? Well, think of it like the Goldilocks zone for learning. It's that perfect sweet spot, you know. It's not the stuff you can already do in your sleep, and it's not the stuff that's way, way out of your league. It's that space right in between, where a task is challenging, yeah, but it's totally doable, as long as you have a little bit of help. And here's how Vygotsky himself put it in his own words. He called it the distance between what you can do all by yourself and what you could do with a little guidance from someone more experienced. It's a really subtle shift in thinking, but it's so powerful. It's about focusing not on what you've already mastered, but on what you're just about to. So let's break it down like this. Picture 3 zones. Zone 1 is your comfort zone, right? All the stuff you can do easily, no problem. Way over on the other side, that's the panic zone. Things that are just too hard right now, totally overwhelming. But smack dab in the middle, that's the ZPD. That's your prime learning real estate. That's exactly where you want to be. Okay, so you're there. You're in the zone. You're feeling that productive struggle. Awesome. But now what? The big question is, how do you actually cross it? How do you go from, I kind of get this with help, to, yep, I've got this all on my own?
Well, the answer is a brilliant little concept called scaffolding. And honestly, the name is just perfect. Think about it. On a construction site, a scaffold helps a builder reach a part of the building they couldn't get to on their own. Learning scaffolds do the exact same thing. They're these little support structures we use to build new skills and bridge that gap in the ZPD.
So what is it really? Scaffolding is basically any kind of temporary help that lets you tackle a problem that's just outside your current skill set. But here's the crucial part. It's not about someone just giving you the answer. Nope. It's about giving you just enough of a nudge so that you can figure it out for yourself. And here's a little fun fact for you. Even though Vygotsky came up with the whole ZPD idea, he never actually used the word scaffolding himself. That term actually came along decades later from some other researchers who were building on his work. It just fit the concept so perfectly that it stuck. Okay, so what does the scaffolding actually look like in real life? It can be super simple stuff. Let's say you're learning to cook a new dish. Your friend, who's a great cook, might show you an example, maybe a photo of how it's supposed to look. Then they break the recipe down into smaller, manageable steps. Along the way, they might give you a reminder, like, hey, don't forget the salt. Or maybe just some encouragement when you're getting frustrated. You've got this. Every single one of those things, that's scaffolding. But here's something we really have to remember. The scaffolding itself isn't the goal. It's just a tool. It's a means to an end. The real point of all this support is to get you to a place of true independence, to where you've totally mastered the skill. I mean, just think about the difference it makes. Without any support, a big, challenging task can feel totally overwhelming, right? Like you're staring at a giant, unclimbable wall. But with the right scaffolding in place, you can ignore all the overwhelming parts and just focus your energy on the one piece you're actually ready to learn. It makes success feel, well, possible. And this is probably the most important part of the whole thing. Just like a real scaffold on a building, this support is meant to come down. It's temporary. As you get better and more confident, those hints, those reminders, they get taken away, piece by piece, until eventually you don't need them at all. And that right there, that's the beautiful outcome of all this. By finding your personal learning zone and using these temporary supports, you literally build a bridge from frustration all the way to fluency. The ultimate goal is to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, having completely mastered something you once really struggled with. How cool is that? So, I'm going to leave you with this to think about. What is it that you're trying to learn right now? Think about it. And more importantly, what's one tiny piece of scaffolding, just a single hint, a quick example, maybe just a little bit of encouragement that could help you cross your learning zone and make that next big leap today? You know that little voice inside your head? The one that's talking to you right now, helping you think, plan, and make sense of the world? It feels like it's just always been there. But what if I told you it wasn't? What if I told you that you actually had to build it? Today, we're jumping into the amazing work of psychologist Lev Vygotsky to find out exactly how we construct our own inner monologue. So let's kick things off with a question you've probably asked yourself. Have you ever seen a little kid totally lost in their own world, just chatting away to their toys or to nobody in particular? It might seem a little weird, right? But it turns out that's not just random babbling. It's one of the most important things they'll ever do. To get why that is, we've got to get into the head of Vygotsky. See, he had this huge idea. He believed language wasn't just for communication. Not at all. He saw it as our species' greatest tool, the ultimate tool for thinking. And yeah, Vygotsky himself put it best. He said, language is our primary way of connecting with the world around us. But, and this is the revolutionary part, he realized that the very same tool we use to talk to others eventually gets flipped around and becomes the tool we use to talk to ourselves. He actually had a name for this whole process: intellectual adaptation. The big idea here is that language isn't just for sending messages back and forth. It's more like a powerful operating system for our brains. It's the software that lets us organize our thoughts, tackle problems, and basically build our own consciousness. So how do we install this software? Well, Vygotsky said it happens in 3 distinct stages. All right, so how do we start building this thing? Well, it all begins with the very first block, the foundation for everything else, and that is social speech. Social speech is, well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's all the talking we do out loud to other people. From a baby's first cry to asking someone for directions, it's language in its most basic form, a tool to connect and communicate with the outside world. Think about it. You've seen this a million times. A baby points at something and yells, "Ball." They're not just naming it, no way. They're using that word as a tool to get your attention, to share something with you, to make something happen. It's 100% social, 100% external. Okay, now for the second block. And this is where it gets really cool. This is the stage that finally explains why kids talk to themselves. It's called private speech. See, something amazing happens around age 3. Kids take that social language they've learned from everyone else, and they start using it on themselves. Out loud. It's literally thinking out loud. They're directing their own behavior, guiding themselves through tasks, step by step. I mean, picture a kid building a tower. They're not talking to you, they're talking to themselves. Okay, the blue one, no, wait, red one first, then the blue one. They're using words as a personal guide, a way to plan their next move and solve the puzzle in front of them. And this is the absolute game changer in Vygotsky's theory. He saw this stage, private speech, as the magic moment. It's the point where language, which was just for talking, and thought, which was silent, finally come together to create something totally new, verbal thinking. This makes it so clear. Private speech is the critical bridge. It takes the tool we first learned for talking to other people and begins pointing it inward, turning it into a tool for talking to ourselves. And get this, it's not just a theory. The science actually backs him up. Vygotsky claimed that this self-talk comes directly from a child's social world, and studies show a super strong link. The more kids interact socially, the more they use private speech. It's simple, really. More conversation with others leads to more conversation with self. So where does this all end up? We've got social speech, we've got private speech. What's the final piece of the puzzle? Well, eventually, that talking out loud to yourself, it doesn't just disappear. It goes underground. And that's when we reach the final stage, silent inner speech. Around age 7 or so, that external chatter goes completely internal. You can't hear it anymore because it's become the silent voice in our heads. It's our internal monologue. It's the stream of consciousness that we call thinking. And look, this isn't some abstract idea. This is the voice you're using right this second to process what I'm saying. It's the tool you use every day to solve a problem at work, to plan your grocery list, to think back on a conversation. It's happening right now. So let's zoom out and look at the whole journey one more time. From a baby's first words to our most complex internal debates, it's a pretty incredible transformation, built step by step from our earliest social interactions. Here it is, the whole blueprint. We start out with social speech, just talking to others. Then, around age 3, language and thought start to merge, which kicks off that all-important private speech phase, our thinking out loud years. And finally, by age 7, that voice goes completely inside, becoming the inner speech we'll use for the rest of our lives. So, if you remember one thing from all this, let it be this. That sophisticated, private world inside your mind, you weren't born with it. It was built. It was constructed piece by piece from the raw material of every conversation, question, and story you ever shared with another human being. And that leaves us with a really big, kind of profound question to think about. If the very architecture of our inner thoughts is built from our outer conversations, what kind of inner worlds are we helping our children build with the words we use with them today? Thanks for joining me on this one.
How in the world does a child's mind go from, well, basically a blank slate to this complex, incredible thinking machine? I mean, how does that actually happen? It's one of the biggest questions in psychology. And you know what? 2 of the field's greatest minds had completely different answers.
So let's just get right to it. The whole debate really boils down to this one big question. Is a child a lone explorer, like a little scientist, figuring out the world all on their own? Or are they more like an apprentice, learning all the important stuff from the people around them? Your answer pretty much decides which camp you're in.
All right, so let's meet the 2 heavyweights in this intellectual showdown. In one corner, we've got the Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget, and in the other corner, the Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky. We're talking about 2 brilliant thinkers working around the same time who looked at the same thing, a developing child, and saw 2 completely different stories.
And this, right here, gets to the absolute core of it. Piaget, we call him a radical constructivist. He was convinced that kids actively build their own knowledge by getting their hands dirty and interacting with the world. You know, like a baby in a high chair who drops a spoon over and over and over again. That's a tiny scientist, all alone, running experiments to figure out gravity. But Vygotsky, on the other hand, was a social constructivist. He said, no, learning is social from the get-go. Think about a kid learning to bake. They don't just figure it out by themselves, right? They learn by watching a parent, getting help, and being guided. So for Vygotsky, knowledge isn't something you just discover, it's something you build with other people.
Okay, round 1, let's talk about culture. Is the journey our minds take a universal superhighway? Is it pretty much the same for every kid, no matter where they are in the world? Or is it more like a bunch of local country roads, where the path you take is totally shaped by the town you grew up in?
Piaget was all about that universal highway. He came up with these very specific stages that he believed all children go through in the same order, period. Doesn't matter if you're in Paris or Papua New Guinea. But Vygotsky, he totally disagreed. He argued that your culture gives you the very tools you think with: language, symbols, problem-solving tricks. So how could development possibly be the same everywhere? To him, the way a kid in a bustling city learns to think is going to be fundamentally different from a kid in a rural village, because their cultures teach and value totally different skills.
On to round 2. And this one is a classic chicken or the egg puzzle, but for your brain. So what comes first, the thought or the words to describe the thought?
For Piaget, the answer was simple. Thought comes first. You have to have a concept in your head, like you have to understand what a dog is before you can learn the word dog. Language just labels the thoughts you already have. Vygotsky, though, he saw it in a completely different light. He had this really cool idea that thought and language start out as 2 separate things. But then, around age 3, bam, they merge together and create something new and incredibly powerful: verbal thought. So in this view, language doesn't just label your thoughts, it actually changes them. It becomes the main tool you use for thinking.
And this example makes the difference so clear. You've seen this, right? A little kid playing with blocks, just chatting away to themselves? Well, Piaget called that egocentric speech. He saw it as a sign the kid was kind of stuck in their own head, that they were immature. But Vygotsky, he called it private speech, and he thought it was genius. He saw it as the child literally thinking out loud, using words to guide what they're doing, to plan their next move, to solve problems. It's not a weakness, it's cognition in action.
All right, let's hit our 3rd big disagreement. How does learning actually work?
Do you have to be biologically ready before you can learn something new? Or can learning actually drag your development forward? Put it this way, does development lead learning, or does learning lead development?
Piaget was team development comes first. For him, a child has to reach a certain stage of brain development, and then they're ready to learn certain things. Learning just follows a path that's already been paved. It's why he'd say teaching calculus to a 6-year-old is useless. Their brain just isn't there yet. Vygotsky completely flipped that script. He said learning is the very engine of development. By working with someone who knows more, a teacher, a parent, a friend, a child can grasp things that are just out of their reach, and that process, that struggle, is what pulls their whole development forward. It's why a great teacher can make all the difference in the world.
And that brings us to our final round. And honestly, this one gets to the absolute heart of the matter. It's all about direction. Does our mental growth start inside of us and work its way out, or does it start out in the world and work its way in?
For Piaget, the direction is clearly inside out. It starts inside the person, intrapersonal. Our little lone explorer has an aha moment. They figure something out in their own head first, and only after that internal discovery happens do they express it and share it with the world. The individual mind is the starting point for everything. And Vygotsky, he just completely reverses the flow. He says development is outside in. It starts between people, intrapersonal. A child learns by having a conversation, by working on a puzzle with a parent, by being taught something in school. Then, over time, they take those social experiences and absorb them, making them their own private internal thoughts. So for Vygotsky, all our complex thinking actually begins as a social event.
So let's just lay it all out for the final showdown. You've got the individual radical constructivist versus the social constructivist. You have the idea that development is universal versus the idea that it's shaped by culture. Thought coming before language versus thought and language merging into one. And that crucial difference, development leading learning versus learning pushing development forward. And finally, that core direction. Is it inside out or outside in? When you see it all together, you realize these are not just small disagreements. These are two totally different blueprints for how a human mind gets built.
In the end, this isn't really about picking a winner. The truth is, modern psychology pulls ideas from both of these giants. But it does leave us with a really fascinating question to ask ourselves. Think about your own life, about how you learned to do something tricky. Maybe it was learning an instrument or a new language, or just a complex idea at work. Which one of these models feels more true to your experience? Were you more of a lone explorer, figuring it all out from the inside out? Or were you a social apprentice, learning from the outside in? It's something to think.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful way to think about learning. And this isn't just for kids in a classroom. We're talking about tackling any challenge, whether you're picking up a new language, learning an instrument, or just trying to get through a tough project at work. How you think about that challenge, well, that's everything.
All right, so let me ask you something right off the bat. When you picture someone learning something incredible, what do you see? Is it that lone genius, toiling away in isolation until, bam, that eureka moment hits? We love that story. But what if it's mostly a myth? What if real, deep learning is actually a team sport?
So to get our heads around this, let's follow a learner on their journey. This could be you, it could be me, anyone who's facing a new skill. And where this journey kicks off is maybe the most important part of the whole thing. See, smart learning doesn't start with someone just handing you a textbook. It starts with a real, meaningful challenge. Something that isn't just an abstract problem on a page, but something that actually connects to your life, to your goals. That's what gets you invested.
But here's the thing, not just any challenge will work. You've got to find that learning sweet spot. There's this brilliant psychologist, Lev Vygotsky, who really pioneered this idea. It's all about finding that perfect, just right level of difficulty.
First, let's think about what happens when a task is way too easy. You've given our learners something they can already do in their sleep. What happens? You know what happens. They get bored. Their mind wanders, their motivation just tanks, there's no challenge, so there's zero growth. Okay, now let's swing to the complete opposite end. We throw a problem at them that is just impossibly difficult. It's so far beyond what they can currently do. And the result? Total and complete frustration. They feel defeated before they even start. They just want to give up.
But right there in the middle of too easy and too hard, that's where the magic happens. This is the Goldilocks zone. It's a task that feels like a real stretch, for sure. But it also feels doable, achievable, if you just had a little bit of help.
And this just right zone actually has a name.
It's called the Zone of Proximal Development, or ZPD for short. It's basically the most fertile ground for learning there is. Want to know how to find your own ZPD? Look for that task that makes you think, ugh, I almost have this, I just need a little nudge. That feeling, right there on the edge of understanding, that's your sweet spot.
Okay, so if the best learning happens with a little help, what does that tell us? It means learning is fundamentally social. It's not a solo mission at all. So now let's dig into the how, the actual support system that lets us tackle these challenges in the first place. I mean, this is the heart of Vygotsky's entire theory. We learn best when we're talking to each other, working together, bouncing ideas around. It's in that shared, collaborative space that things finally click and skills really start to stick.
And this support has a really cool name, scaffolding. Seriously, think about it like you're building a house. You can't reach the second floor without some temporary support, right? It's the same here. A good guide or teacher will demonstrate the skill, maybe break it down into smaller, simpler steps, and give you feedback along the way. Then, as you get stronger, they slowly take that support away until you can stand on your own.
And get this, that guide, that teacher, doesn't always have to be some expert. Sometimes the absolute best person to help you is a peer, someone who's just a few steps ahead of you in the process. Learning from them can be an incredibly powerful way to get across your own zone of proximal development. Okay, let's zoom in on that guide for a second. Whether it's a teacher, a mentor, a coach, or a parent, their role is so much bigger than just giving instructions. Honestly, their entire mindset is absolutely critical for the learner to succeed. What makes a great guide isn't just about technique, it's about belief. They connect the lesson to the real world with authentic examples. They don't just tolerate the learner's background, they see it as a huge strength. They're constantly creating little opportunities for you to win, to succeed. And maybe most important of all, they have this unshakable faith that you can do it. The sociocultural context of a child is very significant in the learning process. So what does that actually mean? It means you can't just separate a person from their world. Their culture, their family, their past experiences, those aren't distractions from learning. They're the very foundation that all new knowledge has to be built on. So let's put it all together. We've got a meaningful challenge, we've got the right kind of social support, and we've got a guide who believes in you. What happens when all those pieces fall into place? What's the real endgame here? Well, the payoff is so much bigger than just learning that one thing. The real goal is learning how to learn. It's about developing these incredible tools for critical and analytical thinking. It's about developing metacognition, which is just a fancy way of saying you start to understand your own thinking process. And this is what that transformation looks like from the inside. The whole journey is about moving from that place of frustration, I can't do this, to that supported, growing confidence of, okay, I can do this with help, and finally to that amazing independent moment of mastery. I can. That's the breakthrough. So I'll leave you with this thought. Learning opportunities are literally all around us, and so are the people who can help us get there. So take a second and think about it. Who are the teachers, the guides, the peers in your life? And what's the next just right challenge that you can take on together?